Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wisdom from North. My guest on the show today is one of the world's leading spiritual teachers and one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Teal Swan. She was just here yesterday and did a fabulous workshop. Many people came and it was amazing. And today I think we're going to speak about relationship and some of the questions that you have emailed me as well. Teal, it's wonderful to get to know you and meet you in person, and thank you for being on my show again.
Well, thanks for having me. This is awesome. It's like I get to see you on Skype and now here you are in person.
Yeah, it's been really nice, and we just went to the park and hung out, and I was pondering about what I was going to ask you, because our last interview was on Skype and we talked about the law of attraction, and we really went into depth about that subject. And it's been very popular. It's been watched by like 114,000 people. And I can really recommend watching that Skype interview. But today I want to speak about the concept of soul groups and soulmates and twin souls and relationships, because that's something we all have to deal with in life. And I'm really curious if you can talk about, the concept before, on the other side, like before we go into this world, what kind of agreements are we making? And are we in kind of a soul group before we go down here? So is that the souls we are meeting on Earth, on the planet?
Okay, so before you come into this life, you are part of a perspective which takes into account all perspectives. So it's almost like if you took every perspective of every living and non-living thing in existence, you combined it all, that is what we're calling source or God energy. But just like you can divide a pie up and each piece of the pie is still the pie, that's kind of how the universe works. So another good way to conceptualize of this with the mind is to think about currents within an ocean. So let's say that you could be a part of the East Indian current, and I could be a part of some current that's going past Hawaii or something like that, but we would both still be the ocean. So it may be helpful to think about soul groups, or the soul family that you belong to, as a specific current within the ocean. Does that make sense?
Yes, but what is then an individual soul?
An individual soul would be like a current within the ocean. So in previous years, I have really made a good analogy, I think, about a wave. So if you look at a big wave, you could think about an individual soul like a wave that's within a bigger wave that is then part of the ocean itself. That is what an individual perspective is. It's almost like source consciousness is just dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing down to the singular, the most singular perspective that it can maintain. It's trying to hone in on it because of the preferences that are birthed from that singular perspective. And the preferences, of course, give rise to the expansion of the universe. Now, so your question basically was, how does that fit into the grand scheme of things with source consciousness? Now, the reality is, what I want to do as source, let's just pretend we are God or we are source. What I want to do is to understand me. But to understand me, I have to step outside myself. I have to see myself in relation to something. So that's the reason for the division in the first place. And the more that divides and divides, the more perspectives it has to look at itself with. So let's look at this in terms of a soul family. If we pretend that you and I are all part of one soul family, and that soul family wants to gain the most amount of perspective that it can, it's going to want to come in as many ways and in as many relationships as it can. So let's just take you and me. If you and I are part of a soul family, we want to know everything we can possibly know. That's our goal. Then what I want to do is to experience you as a lover, experience you as a mother, experience you as a daughter or a son, everything I can think of so that I know what that perspective is like. I want to exhaust my perspectives.
But how many souls are in a soul family or a soul group?
There's no way to say that because it's not just living beings that are part of a soul group. It could also be inanimate objects as well. So this table could be part of our soul group.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, people don't think about this because we love to make a differentiation between what's alive and what's not alive. But everything is imbued with consciousness, so everything is ultimately God. So God is also the table. So we could say, what soul family portion of God does the table belong to?
Because the table is kind of a part of a soul in a way. It's just an aspect.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, so why are we divided into different soul groups in a way? And how long are we kind of stuck with that group in a way?
You can migrate if you'd like to. You can change if you'd like to. They call it a soul migration. Sometimes you'll choose to do that because of you want the different perspective. So, okay, you can understand it this way. If we look at the world and we get really racial, okay, you could look at the collective consciousness of mankind, or you could hone in on the consciousness of African Americans in general on Earth, or you could hone in on the consciousness of Asians. And I can tell you, even though we could have a lot of words go between us about what those perspectives mean, more than that, you can kind of feel into the difference in them, like energetically. So you can feel that the perspective or the feeling of African American has a very definite feel, whereas the feeling of Asian has a very different feel. So if I'm coming into that experience, I am basically putting on that perspective. I'm looking through those lenses. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So sometimes it benefits souls if they have exhausted that perspective to come into a totally new perspective. So a soul family is just like that, but on a bigger level. It's like one soul family will have the consciousness of African Americans plus Asians plus whatever else plus extraterrestrial consciousness going into its perspective, but that perspective still has a certain feel, and that perspective still has desire. Isn't it interesting to think about that? The individual is not the only one that broadcasts forth desire. Whole soul groups do. So for example, there's a soul group within this universe that is called by the humans Abraham. That particular soul group is desiring right now for people to line up with their expansion. That's what they're desiring. Their whole goal is about that, right? Our soul group, mine particularly, which is Adonai, is the most interested with humanity coming into a state of pure oneness.
Okay, can I just ask you, I just have to put my sweater on here. Adonai, is that a planet? What is that? And how do you know that that's your soul group?
It's the word that was chosen by humanity for the soul group that I'm a part of. This soul group that I'm a part of was educating humanity a long time ago, in fact. It began before the birth of Christ, in fact. So it's really funny to admit, but if you look at the soul families that teach specific groups of people, Adonai is the one that was teaching the early Judaism and the early Jewish mysticism the most. So we're making a comeback, I think.
Okay, so how does this work? Like, let's say we're on the other side and we're deciding that we're going to go down on this planet and I'm gonna, become your lover or we're gonna be soulmates. But then again, I'm confused about how this works out with co-creation. Let's say I'm here right now and I'm supposed to meet this man, but I make some different choices, so I don't meet the one that I had an agreement.
That's okay if you don't meet them. But your internal guidance system, before you even come in, is going to be programmed for that thing that you knew would serve you. So it's like a child comes in with preferences. Have you noticed that? Anybody who's had kids will notice that even from the get-go, this kid wants to do horses. This kid wants to do ice hockey, right? And so what we have to acknowledge is a lot of that desire is in fact coming in response to the original decision we made before coming in. It's like we roll the ball, and then whatever happens along the course is influenced by a lot of the things we interact with, but that rolling of the ball is what sets it all in motion. So we set our lives in motion, and then we continue to choose along the path, but your internal guidance system, your emotions, are always going to be leading you in the direction of those things which most benefit you. And often, throughout the course of your life, you are going to, especially on a soul level, to some degree stay in alignment with your original choice, because that was the whole reason you're here in the first place. So let's say that the whole reason you wanted to come down here was to experience what real love is like. So you got the ball rolling by saying, okay, I want to know what love is. So I'm going to come down to a family that doesn't want me. Bam, so you roll the ball, right? Now, everything in your internal guidance system is going to lead you in the direction of true love. That was your original intention. So let's say that you had set up a soul contract with some man to meet in your 20s or whatever. And
Is it that specific? Like you?
very specific. So, well, it depends on the soul contract too, but it can be that specific, yes. So let's say you were meant to, you set this soul contract to meet when you were 20 years old. Your internal guidance system is always going to be veering in that direction. It's going to keep leading you in that direction. So to the degree that you find alignment with that internal guidance system, which is, of course, positive and negative emotion, what feels the best, to the degree that you line up with that, is the faster that you will line up with that, or the easier you will line up with that, the less resistance there is to lining up with those soul contracts. And soul contracts aren't always yummy. You know, a lot of times it's like you made the contract with somebody, if you wanted to know true love, who really didn't want you. That's a contract too. I make a contract with a mother, so you and me, let's say. We know that I know you and you know me, and we're ultimately one at a higher level. So what I might say, since it's all like a vibrational conversation, but what I might say to you is, okay, it's going to benefit both of us for you to understand what love is, and so you have to understand what love isn't. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to have this experience, and that's going to cause me to get so out of alignment with myself that I get pregnant at 16 and I don't want you. I'm going to play that role for you so that when you come down into that experience, you feel unwanted, and that makes you desire being wanted so much that that becomes your aim, your goal, and you're going to get it. But you wouldn't have even known you wanted it without me.
But let's say, you know, you meet
A
someone.
lot of people made a contract with Hitler.
Really?
Stalin has even more, in fact. Sorry, I go out of body sometimes to look at these contracts because I find it highly interesting what souls are trying to do on this earth. So when you look at like these mass murderers like Stalin and like Pol Pot, a lot of times when you see them, their singular thought form within the six-dimensional reality, you'll see these links to like millions of different beings that all chose to create that contract together for the sake of the expansion, not only of themselves, but of an entire group of people.
Huh. So you go out of your body at night, and then you go out, and then you go up to the sixth dimension, which is a higher dimension.
I can go to any of the dimensions until you bleed into basically the perspective that's all one, that's source consciousness. But the sixth dimensional consciousness is still one that the physical mind can translate. So I find that the sixth and seventh dimensional realities are the most easy to comprehend. It's like the level I want to see that experience at. Plus, it doesn't involve like multiple timelines the way that other time-space realities do. When you get to the higher dimensional realities, if I'm looking at a soul contract with someone like Pol Pot, I'm also looking at all of his previous contracts with everything, so it can get very jumbled. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have to ask some more questions about that because this is highly interesting. So do you feel basically that, I mean, when you're able to do that, can you get an answer to anything? I mean, even your own stuff, your own issues, you can just get the answers. I mean,
Yes, but
yeah, because I'm wondering if there's still challenges then when you can get all the answers.
now, what's my excuse is the question. You can, but the thing is that relative to yourself, there's always going to be a little bit of an issue with really seeing yourself objectively, because it's like you're looking through, I'm in my perspective, so I'm looking through the lens of teal, right? So in order to see myself objectively, I have to literally remove myself from the lens of teal and then like look at it objectively, which is why it's more easy for other people to see us. And that was how it was intended anyways, because you seeing me is really me seeing me. If you catch my drift. But that's why it's really difficult to see yourself clearly. So let's say that you get you're looking through your lens, right? This is my perspective. Let's say something really painful happens and it causes me to drop into a frequency that's so low about this that now I'm not even a vibrational match to experiencing these interdimensional realities where I can get there. So what I find interesting is if I drop into a really low frequency about my own life, then there will be a point that I cross where it's like I can no longer hear my own spirit guides talking, which is very rare, but it does happen. So I have to essentially raise my frequency first in order to access those kinds of dimensional realities. So the answer is yes, I could tell you anything you want to know about me unless I'm in the lowest of the low kind of vibrations, and then I'm just like everybody else. It just rarely happens relative to myself.
That's interesting. So let's go back to, the relationships. We come down here and we meet someone we are attracted to, and we get into this relationship and,
I said, oh dear God.
Yeah.
Attraction is a very complicated subject.
Yeah, because I'm wondering about that. What is it? I mean, is that the recognition of that soulmate in your soul group?
Only sometimes. Oh. So attraction is a biochemical reaction within the body, but it occurs in response to multiple different things. So you could have that reaction in response to your soulmate. You could also have that reaction in response to finding somebody who is the mirror of your subconscious aspect, which is not always pleasant. And this is the thing which really confuses the majority of people, because they're like, well, my emotions told me yes about this person, and then in 2 months he was, screwing my best friend and burnt my house to the ground, and, all of that kind of stuff. I know that's an extreme example, but it's true for some women. So they're going like, okay, well, I followed my guidance system. That was definitely not my soulmate. I could tell, when he threw my clothes off of the balcony. So what was going on? And what we have to understand is we got to think of ourselves like a magnet, right? So even though our emotional guidance system definitely is always pulling us in the direction of growth, growth is not always going to be a positive feeling thing, right? Those of us who've been through painful things, when we're looking back at it years in advance, can say, oh my gosh, that was so good for me. But let me tell you, in the middle of it, you're going to be like, that is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. Yeah. So it's going to be pulling us in that direction. We got to understand that. But when we feel attraction, it means that there's a polarization. Polarization means we're not in a state of wholeness. So I know I'm making this face.
Well, the opposite attracts, right, in a way?
Well, you'd think so. It actually doesn't work that way. See, isn't that sort of confusing? On this hand, we're talking about the law of attraction, which is like attracts like. Mm-hmm. So then it can't be true that the opposites attract, can it?
Right.
I can explain this to you in about 10 seconds. Ready? Okay. The majority of the time, this is what's happening with attraction. Let's say that I am raised in a family that's not okay with anger. So this family says, you are not going to show your anger. Little girls have to keep sweet. So for me to belong in that family and to keep getting approval, I have to suppress my anger. So after a while, when you reject or disown or deny an aspect of yourself, it becomes an aspect of your subconscious self, your subconscious mind. It becomes a suppressed self. So I will be walking around consciously thinking, no, I'm not angry. Everything's fine. When in reality, I have a suppressed aspect that's very angry. So everyone that knows me thinks I'm really sweet and I'm really lovely and I just love everybody, right? That's going to be your experience of me. But I'm going to keep attracting men who are really angry. And it will seem like they're my opposite, right? But all they are is a mirror for my subconscious aspect. That's like attracts like. So the only reason really that we find our opposites is because there's an aspect of us that we have suppressed, denied, and disowned that wants to be re-owned. So we're externalizing the re-owning. We're basically putting ourselves through a process of trying to fall in love with what we rejected within ourselves. That's why people attract each other. It's the number one reason, in fact. But when it comes to attracting soulmates, if you are going to make a contract with somebody, wouldn't it make sense to do that? To say, my goal is oneness. That's everybody's goal. So the integration, to become completely whole and self-actualized is my goal. That's really the ultimate soul goal that all of us have. So wouldn't it benefit me to get out of alignment, to reject the angry aspect of myself, and then to have a contract with somebody later where I am forced to look at that mirror and to love that mirror and to re-own that anger? So basically, we have the idea of the soulmate completely wrong. And this aspect is something that people have a hard time accepting, because we have been raised and suckled on a very odd idea of relationships. So if you watch mainstream media is going to sell you on the idea that the perfect relationship is what you want to go for because it's going to make you feel better about everything. So it's basically, mainstream media is selling you the idea of a relationship more like a drug. More like, take this pill, which is the person, take this pill and you're going to feel good all the time. And someone's going to approve of you all the time. And you're going to, so it's basically helping you to escape from your emotions. Now, the reality is, though you can feel very good in a relationship and it can definitely add to your life, it's much more beneficial for a soulmate to trigger you into a state of wholeness that may or may not be comfortable. And so I feel like what's happening is we're being set up within society to think of relationships in a very unrealistic way. We're basically putting the whole weight of our lives on another being and saying, unless this person makes me feel good 24 hours a day, this is not the soulmate. But the soulmate, from a universal perspective, could be your worst enemy. So, it was quite shocking to me when I was in my teens and was going out of body a lot to try to figure out this dynamic of relationships and how it worked, to find out that one of my soulmate contracts, because there's not just one of my soulmate contracts was in fact with my abuser.
I can understand that.
Well, good, because that takes a high level of consciousness to understand that.
Yeah, but I can understand that that's almost unbearable to realize in a way. There's many people who have gone through difficult relationships, and when we talk about that, this is a pre-contract in a way, that this is decided on from before, it kind of feels unfair. Because you, in a way, you want to feel like a victim. You're angry and you don't want to ever be with that person again, So I think it takes a lot of work on yourself to get to that state where you can forgive.
Yeah, exactly. This is a real big mistake that people make in relationships when they get to this phase where sometimes in the soulmate relationship, which should be differentiated between desiring a relationship that can help you maintain like that sense of basically unconditional love. You can desire that. So we should stop here, because it sounds to some people, and I can tell because now I'm actually looking right now at how people are going to perceive this. There's a bit of a letdown in the experience. So if you are the kind of person who really has a clear desire to experience a romantic relationship with somebody that can last permanently throughout the course of your life and add to your life instead of take away from it, then you cannot have that desire without it being meant to be yours. So it's not like I'm saying all your relationships are going to be painful, because that's the point of a relationship, because that's not the case. But we need to differentiate between the soulmate relationship and that kind of relationship, which could or could not be the soulmate relationship.
Okay. So how can you attract that? How can you attract that soulmate relationship and differentiate between, that kind of... You can't?
You cannot differentiate, because the thing is, to get to that relationship, all you got to do is to clear out the aspects that are in the way of that relationship. So the thing is that, like, every soulmate, even if it's comfortable or uncomfortable that you meet on the trail to that thing you ultimately want, which is the good feeling relationship, is essential to even get you there.
Well, that makes sense.
So here's an example. This is a common example. It's the archetype of a woman who continually ends up in relationships with someone who is not going to be a partner, can't commit. Okay, so let's just be honest. Like if I look at female consciousness on the globe, the number one issue is this man will not commit. So if you've got a woman who is in that type of a pattern, then what will happen is she will find soulmate after soulmate that basically abandons her. I can't commit. I'm not going to commit. But yet she keeps jumping into these relationships, keeps doing the same patterns. That's what the pattern is about. So what will happen is she will do that until she lines up with, and they'll get bigger and bigger. We should know that about mirrors. Each successful relationship gets like a bigger and bigger mirror for that until we're ready to break the pattern. At which point, it becomes painful enough, usually, that we turn towards ourselves completely. And this goes for women and men, but in this case, we're doing a woman. So the woman turns towards herself and says, you know what, I'm going to get really conscious. I can't do this again. So I have to look at the childhood wounds in me that are making me compelled to go in the direction of this. And then I'm going to have to make a lot of different decisions in my life. And one of those decisions might be to break off the relationship with the pattern. So now what we make a mistake as people, thinking that what we're doing is breaking the relationship with the person. So we make it about the person when it's really about the pattern. So like, let's say that you've got that guy in your life who's not committing. And you may be in a place where it's very much so in alignment for you to say, you know what, I'm breaking it off, I'm done. But what you're saying I'm done to is not necessarily them, because all relationships are eternal. You're part of them no matter what. So what you're saying I'm done with is that pattern. You're basically saying I'm done playing the game where I'm all in and they are not.
I just have to say something here, because it was really good to hear that you're saying that it's internal, the relationship is internal. Because I think sometimes when you feel like, or you want to break up, you feel like you don't want to lose that person. Because then the person disappears. It's not there anymore, and you can't handle that.
No.
But it's still, I mean, you will still meet.
Yes, you will. You're still going to be a part of the same thing. So all you're saying, if it comes to that, is I'm done with the pattern. I'm not going to make that choice anymore. Where if you don't come forward, I'm not going to keep chasing you because it's killing me.
But why is it so hard to let go? Like, I think everybody knows something about that, like letting go. You know you have to let go. All your friends are saying, let go, let go, let go. And I mean, I can just talk about myself, just letting go of my past. I'm like, where to let go?
There's still something there for you. I mean, this is very difficult because you'd expect that as a spiritual teacher, I'd say, if it's bad for you, just get away from it. Yeah. I wouldn't, in fact, say that. I would say, don't make it about getting away from the person. Don't make it about breaking the relationship unless that feels like it's in alignment, unless it feels like I'm really ready to end this. Then don't end it. But what you got to do instead is focus entirely on aligning. So it's almost like letting the universe do it. This is like the best advice you can ever get for breaking up, basically. Instead of making it about the decision to end it or to keep it going, you just stop focusing on that. And instead you focus on your alignment. So what I would do is pour myself into figuring out all the patterns that are going on with me. Pour myself into finding alignment. And if it feels in alignment to talk to them, talk to them. You don't need to do the no-talk policy unless that feels good. And what you'll notice if you just spend your whole time, and it does take effort, if you spend your days trying to find your alignment, and just lining up, then what you'll notice is naturally your vibrations shift. And then that's the universe will choose. Either that person fucking commits, or else you will actually see them go away, but this go away will not feel painful. It's not going to feel like, oh my God, I just lost everything. When that happens, it usually means that it's premature. So
the relationship is premature, or he is
cutting it off. If you get into a situation in a relationship where it feels terrible to break it off, it's premature.
Yeah, because we're used to hearing that, oh, you got to be strong, you just have to move on. And it doesn't feel right to move on.
Then don't do it. Now, this is going to be the most challenging thing for all of your girlfriends because it's going to put them in a position where they have to consider that there is something valuable in the experience for you, to continue struggling with the dynamic until you are shifting your vibration. Now, you will feel stuck, but it's not actually true. A lot of that stuckness, in fact, that feeling of stuckness is just a reflection of a wound of feeling stuck when you were a child trying to get attention from a parent that wouldn't give it to you. That's the most common pattern that we find. Now, why is this so prevalent with young girls? Because a lot of us had dads that didn't know how to emotionally connect with us. So we're still in that position where we're in our little tap shoes, you know, trying to do the dance, and daddy's like looking at the paper or off at work. So we're just stuck in that feeling and that dynamic and unhealed about it. So when we start to heal that dynamic within ourselves, we'll actually start to lose interest in it. That's much better than just making a physical action. Saying I'm done with the relationship and taking a physical action should only be done when that feels like relief.
So it's really about, you know, yourself all the time, healing aspects of yourself. It's not about that other person, those other people, those circumstances. It's about you, always.
Yeah, it's always about you. It's always about you, and it's easier said than done, but I mean, face the music. Most of us, when we're dealing, especially in this particular dynamic, with an unavailable man, with a man that will not commit, how well has it been going to try to control his behavior? It doesn't work. So what we have to do basically is to say, you know what, I got to take my power back. The only way to do that is to basically take the power in terms of figuring myself out, ask the most important questions, start doing things that nourish me, start increasing my frequency on my own, and get as much help as I need to do that. And then the answer will come. That's the answer. The answer is really not, it's like when you know. Until then, you don't know. But we have a hard time being uncomfortable, so that's the reality. We, as women and as men, we have a really big issue feeling the feelings of grief, feeling those uncomfortable feelings of stuckness. And so we want to take a physical action to end the feeling, and often when it comes to relationships, we take that step and then it gets worse. You know, we take the action, we break the relationship off, and then we're on the floor for 5 weeks crying and eating boxes of chocolates, watching soap operas. So what we have to learn really is the ability to, instead of take physical action when we're really out of alignment, we need to come back to ourselves and be willing to feel these uncomfortable feelings, because that's the subconscious that's rising up and saying, look, you're about to become something new. You're about to step into a brand new vibrational set point. And if you're willing to really be with yourself and then keep going in the direction of just more and more alignment, then the answers take care of themselves. You don't need to do the work of that. That's what's so good about it. And this is not a graceful process. Like, none of relationships in general are going to be a graceful process because we never had the perfect example. So we're breaking new ground at this point in history in terms of relationships. So it's not like this is just going to go smoothly. You're going to have those moments where you ignore your internal guidance system and you say, fine, we're done then. You know, and then 10 seconds later, you're on the ground. And then you're going to find what alignment is again. So that's pretty much how it's going to go. But the point is, you're going to learn your own alignment.
So in a way, you have to trust that that relationship that wasn't good or that wasn't your soulmate is taking you to that other soulmate relationship.
If you can trust that, then that would be very, very good, yes. I think it's a beneficial idea to consider. The majority of people on this planet are not going to be able to just trust that because it sounds like complete hooey, and when you're in a hell of a lot of pain, especially relative to a relationship, anybody promising you that it's taking you to something better is like, no. In fact, it's happened to me 8 times before, so why wouldn't it happen again? But I think it's a good idea to consider that people, especially me, are basically telling you that that's how the universe works, because it can provide some kind of hope. But I think that if you can't feel that way, it's okay to not feel that way. It's okay to be hopeless. Isn't that an interesting idea? We don't have to rush to feeling good or rush to believing that there's a perfect person out there. Sometimes we can really just say, you know what, right now I'm feeling pretty hopeless.
You know, I just love hearing that because you are here in Norway and now you've kind of gotten into, you know, how things work here, the energy here. And we're all about, you know, moving forward and going online to find someone or, you know, you got to do this and you got to do that. You can't just be in that state of hopelessness or being in the emotions. You got to, you know, fix it. And that's hard. It's hard to be vulnerable here.
Yes, it's exhausting. I don't know how popular I'm being this week with the Norwegian people because of how honest I'm being about the issues that are happening on an emotional level in this particular country. But this sort of like, you can't ever show your weakness, you've got to just push through everything type of mentality is, it's really exhausting. I would think it would be very difficult to date here.
But it's just good to have the allowance to be able to stay in your emotions and go through the process, and that it's okay to have a messy relationship. You know, it's okay. We don't need this Facebook profile all the time.
Okay, I don't know one person on earth, literally, who has a relationship that's clean. Everybody has a relationship that's messy in some way. And also, all of us are transforming something in our lives. Even like, high transcendent spiritual teachers have come in specifically for expansion. That means that they have been given or given themselves something to work with, something to exalt. So there's not a person on earth, if they are living, there is not a person on earth who is not working to create an improvement out of some situation. And relationships are just the same. Every couple has their thing that they're trying to transform or exalt. It's almost like two couples come together, and many aspects of the relationship are just amazing, and these other aspects are kind of like a lumpy form of clay. And what we do as a couple, the real good couples, will come together, get their hands dirty, and mold out of that clay something like a beautiful vase together. That's really what a successful relationship is about. But the couples that do the very worst are the ones that expect it to always feel good. If we walk into a relationship saying, you know what, there's no way that as a person, I can't even think about myself positively 24 hours a day. How am I going to think about another person positively 24 hours a day? It's not going to happen. So it becomes a practice. So if you and I are entering into a relationship, this is what a conscious relationship is about, you and I would say, I know that it's not always going to be feeling good. So my commitment to you is that I'm going to get my hands dirty when it doesn't feel good. And that creates the security. So even if we're not feeling good, but we're together still. And that creates a higher vibration than the lower one that we would be experiencing if we expected it to always feel good.
Is this the new spiritual relationships that are emerging?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
And it's beautiful to watch, because the couples that you watch that are in that type of mentality, because they don't expect the other person to keep everything feeling good 24 hours a day, they approach the negative experiences almost with an attitude of excitement. Because it's like, oh, now we have something to work with.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, it is. And so what you watch when there's an issue in the relationship is it doesn't cause the couple to go away. Both people basically challenge themselves to come forward in those moments. And it's amazing. So I'm thinking that the human race, once all of it adopts this new paradigm of relationships, it's really going to be something quite beautiful.
Wow. I received a few emails from people, and there was this girl, her first name was starting with a T, so you know who you are, and she was asking about relationships, and she had a breakup with a man she really loved because he was unfaithful, and she still finds that she loves him and has this hope. And she's wondering about if it's okay to have this hope, or what she should do about it. I mean, is it okay to go back, or should she go back, or should she,
This is difficult because it should always be an individual choice. It's really easy for women to fall into the trap of listening to every female friend that says, if a guy cheats or if something happens, you should instantly be done. That needs to be an individual choice, because it is true that some couples actually grow much stronger and much more happy after something like that. But when trust is broken in the relationship, it must be repaired. It must be repaired, or else the relationship really is doomed. So it's an individual decision that a woman should ask herself. Is this the kind of thing that I would like to come back from? Can I come back from it? Or is it literally just too much of a message of I'm not committed to you, or I don't want you, or I'm not willing to work on it with you, that it's not self-loving for me to stay? So it really should be a question according to self-love. Is it more self-loving for me to try to see if relationships can come back from this right now? Or is it more self-loving for me to draw the line and set a boundary? And that's enough for me. I feel like we listen to society too much. Society says, if a guy cheats on you, let go. But that's not the source perspective. Source perspective is, it's a cultural belief if a man cheats on you or if you cheat on him that the relationship should instantly be over, because that's a human contract that we make with each other. But I mean, we could just as easily have been born into a society that believed that having sex with another person was the same as hugging another person. What if you hugged another man and that was enough grounds for somebody to break up with you?
Yeah, because that's the issue. I mean, a lot of people are unfaithful, and when you're in a relationship, you easily fall for others. Like, do you have any advice?
Okay, first of all, you are, okay, even if you are madly in love with your partner, meaning like I totally love my partner, I'm attracted to my partner, even if that is the case, you're going to develop attractions to other people. We got to know that going into it, because otherwise it's like the second somebody looks at someone else, they're in trouble. When it turns into an issue is if you've made an agreement with each other. And some people don't make that agreement. But like if you make an agreement with each other that this relationship means I'm going to give myself to you sexually and not somebody else, then that is an agreement we made. That's a level of trust now that we've established. And so I can violate your boundaries by doing anything other than that. But when you watch people cheating after they've made that contract with each other on a conscious level, then it means that there is something that is missing. So this is something that's hard for us, gotta call it, okay? By the point that somebody cheats on you, if you've already made that agreement, you have missed almost every cue that you could possibly miss. I mean, when I see a couple, right, where somebody cheats, looking at that person objectively, you're looking at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, potentially years of that person being unhappy and no one talking about it. It is the lack of communication that is making it so everybody cheats.
But isn't it only that you can fall for somebody else because maybe that's another part of your soul group? Or
Yeah, potentially, but it's very unlikely because of our need for the secure attachment. Humans need a secure attachment, and we are even on a genetic level. Let's just leave the soul out of it. On a genetic level, we are essentially programmed to bond for a minimum of 13 to 14 years with one partner.
we are?
Yes. So, well, we've got a mix of genetics, but basically that is how we would have raised our young to a degree that they could have taken care of themselves. So it's not even in your genetic favor. After you develop that secure relationship, that's a huge, like, stronghold for your life in general. That's for people in general. So what I notice, I mean, honestly, I have to talk to you from the standpoint of what I know. What I know as an extrasensory is that I have never in my life met somebody who fell in love with another person during a relationship where the relationship itself was happy. Because this is what works. You get into a relationship, you're really happy at first. Why else would you be together? Let's just assume you fell in love. Okay, so if you fall in love with somebody, let's say I fall in love with you. That is creating, like, you know, this beautiful sort of happiness for me for a time. That's why I'm on cloud 9, right? Then we start getting in our first little arguments. Now, that's contrast. And I might be desiring, like everybody does, what I would prefer as opposed to the arguments that we're getting into. Now, if that builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, I will then attract somebody into my life that fits those things. So if I'm frustrated with a wife that's super, super fat, I'm just being really honest, if I'm super, super irritated with that, I'll probably attract a really skinny woman who's really interested in me because I'm still creating. So it means that there's something I'm unsatisfied with. I'm not talking to you about it, but subconsciously I'm giving rise to all this expansion. So it's going to manifest. So our issue is that we are unwilling to get our hands dirty in negative emotion. I'm unwilling as a man to come to you and be like, I don't like this aspect of our relationship. Can we work on it together? These are the reasons why, you know. Do you see us doing that? Most of us don't do that. So
maybe a tricky question, but what if you discover that you're bisexual? That I'm in a happy relationship with a man, and I discover that I like women. And I want to test that out. Does that mean that my relationship is unhappy still, or is it just that I want to explore this part of existence in a way?
It could be that you want to explore that existence in that particular scenario, or it could be that you're miserably unhappy. It could be either one, but let's just pretend that the scenario is that you just have to explore that aspect of your new personality. If you have ended up with a partner currently who is not okay with that, then that means the relationship is unhappy. So like, we have to understand that relationships are constantly evolving. They're never going to stay the same. You're never going to stay the same, so how can a relationship stay the same? I mean, what woman out there is the same when she's 18 and marries a guy than when she's 40 and still married the same guy? You're a different person. So what we're looking to do, if our goal, of course, is to stay with one partner, what we're looking to do is to first partner up with somebody who is okay with the evolution, meaning that they're committed at least to evolving. Then we have to work on allowing the relationship to shift and mutate and change into what it wants to be. When we become very rigid is when we lose our relationships. So in that scenario, I say, I really want to explore this. This feels like my expansion. And the partner says, no way in hell is that going to happen. Bam, puts the door down. Now my expansion is pulling me in a different direction than their expansion. So what we want to do always, because you have one option when you give rise to a desire, and that is literally to achieve it, is we have to have the conversation about how and if being a key word also, we can allow for that expansion while staying together and both be happy. So it's not about sacrificing. So it's like if you say, I'm going to change my job, I just decided I want to move to Japan. I then have to, with you as a partner, discuss about how we can make that happen, but also that being in alignment with what I'm desiring. But if literally I've decided that my happiness cannot possibly include Japan and yours must include Japan, we have got to break up. Like there is no other option. You're going to end up miserable. It's the story we don't want to know about desire. And it's also why desire can be so beautiful and also so horrific.
But you have to honor your desire, right?
You must. You must. And the really good partners are the ones who are interested in each other's expansion.
But that, I think, implies that you have to have worked on yourself beforehand to be able to let that other person have that experience.
Let's just go out on a limb and just say it. If you are a match to an interview like this, if you're choosing partners that are not interested in their own spiritual evolution, you're dead in the water with relationships completely. Because the reality is it's Pandora's box. You can't become conscious and have that be your new desire for life and be with a partner who is unconscious and be happy. It's not possible. So your partner either becomes conscious also or you find a new partner. It's like, yeah, it's sad sometimes. A lot of people break up for this reason because one person's ready to wake up. The other person is like, I don't want to, that's scary, I don't want to look at myself, I don't want to look at the shadows, and then you're in trouble. Because you can't close Pandora's box, can you?
Well, this is interesting. Well, this is interesting. Well, speaking of shadows, I got another email as well from a man with the letter A, and he wished for some more information about shadow work because he has this emotion that he's trying to figure out where it comes from. And I recognize that myself. I've been depressed in my 20s. Like, where does it come from? When did it start? And I try to go back, and I think he did too, try to go back to his childhood. But how does he know that he found the right memory?
You're basically, if you get drawn to a memory, it's always the right memory. Okay. Always, always. Your mind can only make links and associations. Whether you consciously understand that association or not, it's still an association. It's still something that is linked to the end result, which might be a negative behavior or something like that. So what you'll notice, though, often when you're doing the shadow work is when you go back to a specific memory and resolve that, that may be what clears the space for you to find an even deeper memory. So I'm not saying that the memory that you found is ultimately the end result, but it is definitely the one you need to be dealing with right now. It's just that most of us don't have the trust or the confidence to be completely present with the thing that's coming up because we have so much self-doubt.
How or what kind of self-doubt? Is it the doubt that, oh, I can't resolve this? I'm not doing it correctly?
It's more the doubt that your body knows how to heal. So it's the doubt that if I ask the question to myself, when was the first time I felt this or something like that, that my brain would instantly let me have it.
It wouldn't let you have it?
That's what we think when we're in self-doubt. But
Right.
It will. But it will. It's like the people who are like that, who really doubt the shadow work processes, they distrust their own selves, their own bodies. They sort of are living in a state where they feel like their bodies and brains are against them.
Yeah, I recognize that because I try to do it myself and I'm like, this is not working. What are you doing? Like, I doubt it all the time. I don't trust that I can heal myself. And I think a lot of people think that they need someone to do it to them.
Well, see, now that is interesting that you just said that because it plays into the relationship issues too. Because oftentimes, if you've got that same level of distrust, you continue to find relationships with people that are painful, and then you keep reinforcing the idea that you can't trust yourself. I can't trust myself because my being keeps leading me towards these people that hurt. I can't trust myself because, see, fill in the blank. So when you've got that type of attitude about your own self, I can't trust my emotions, I can't trust myself to make the right decisions for me, it's difficult to then think that your body is going to be on the side of healing for you. You sort of think it's going to constantly be trying to trick you. So you're going to ask the question, when was the first time I felt this feeling, as an inner child work thing? And it's going to be like, over there, and like mess you. But it's not going to. It wants to heal just as bad as you.
But it's more like I feel that it's my mind, that it's finding up things, like making some fantasy that, yeah, it can be this and it can be that. And then my mental mind is saying, oh.
Are you ready for me to mess this one up for you?
Okay.
Somebody like me could tell you all day long it's real. What you're experiencing is real, right? And it's never going to make a dent. You're not going to change your mind based on that. You're not going to just trust me. So the reality is, it's better to take an attitude of, regardless of whether it's true or not, this is the construct that my mind has created, the image that my mind has created to enable me to heal. So even if it was a fantasy, it's a fantasy that somehow is going to facilitate my healing or facilitate me to work into a higher vibration. So to begin with, this is especially true for people who go into inner child work and they start getting a lot of like really abusive memories. It's very difficult for people when they start getting those memories, especially if it challenges their ideas of their childhood, to instantly think, oh, this is all true. The first reaction is, this is completely fake. It's like literally made up because there's no way in hell that my parents did that. So somebody in my position would say, don't even try to worry about whether it's true or not. That comes later. Because you might have a few memories where you're like, oh my God, it did happen. And it's the ones that, usually that's when the deeply suppressed memories start sort of surfacing and they link with memories that you do consciously remember. That's when you're like, it becomes reality for you. But I want that to be an organic process. You're not going to be able to force that process. So like, let's say I'm working with a woman who has a really abusive memory and doubts that it's real. We start by saying, it doesn't matter whether it's real or not. This is what your mind has basically given you as an image for you to work with so as to improve the way that you're feeling, to improve the vibration you're struggling with.
So it's really, again, trusting what comes up, what's there, just trusting that this is here for a reason.
Yes, it is about trusting that. But if you can't trust it, it's about just dealing with what comes up because it's all you have. Do you see? Do you see how it's much softer? I love your thing about trust. It's just that I've never met somebody who could do that. I've never met somebody who could. So like for that type of a person that can't just trust that whatever comes up is the right thing, the next best thing is to say, I don't have anything else to work with, so I'm going to work with what comes up. Because I have no other power. I mean, it's actually, that kind of acceptance is beautiful to say, I literally don't have anything else, so.
Well, I like that. That made it much easier because I've been, dealing with this. Is the right memory? Is that the right memory? And then it just gets, it just becomes another problem, and then I kind of give up, But what about belief systems? I think we all have our belief systems, and how can we really resolve them? Because to me, I find my belief systems, I look at them, and I'm like, yeah, they're there. But I can't get rid of them because I just believe in them. I can't not believe in them.
Well, do you want to disbelieve in them? Are you being honest about that?
Not all of them are serving me.
For somebody who is like you, very cerebral. Now, here we are in Scandinavia. One of the things that I like to say about Scandinavians is that they're one of the most cerebral races on the planet.
Is that like intellectual?
Yeah. It means that I live in my head. That's where my life is.
I'm a typical example of that.
Yeah. So that comes with both amazing gifts and serious challenges. The serious challenges, it's much more difficult for you to live according to your internal emotional guidance system. You're kind of going, it's all about logic. So if you have that kind of mind, then what you have to do to change a belief system is to challenge proof. So it's the proof you've got. So for you, changing your beliefs is going to be about really sitting down and giving yourself a 2-hour slot. I would suggest for you a 2-hour slot, but it's worth it because it's like if your beliefs create your reality, either you get to keep doing this or you get to literally take 2 hours out of your day. Now you sit down and you write down whatever belief it is. Say it is, let's just stay with the previous one. Let's just say it's a man will never commit to me. Okay? Say that that's your belief. Now you get to write down your proof. So the proof is, it's 1982, and I went on my first date to the prom with this guy, right? And this is what he did. So that's an item of proof. Your brain is looking at that experience and it's saying, based on that, I can literally tell you, no, they're not going to commit. So your brain is basically resting on the proof for that belief. It's almost like the belief is a table, and the proof it's using is the table legs. In order to have the belief fall, you got to kick out the table legs. To do that, we have to find the proof, and we have to destroy the proof. So that's just one item. You would come up with an entire list of all the proof that you are using for that. So if it's a really ingrained belief system, you've got a lot of proof. So for the item of proof that you're using, let's say in that scenario, it's the prom date in whatever the 80s or 90s that did that thing to you. I would force you to think of how it's not true to use that as proof, how you can't use it as proof. So how is it not true that this guy did not commit to you? Well, I was 16 years old. No kid is ready to commit at that point. Feels real to you, right? Does that feel kind of real? Yeah. So what you just did in that moment is you shot a hole in the table leg. So what I want to do is with that one item of proof, think of every way you can shoot holes in it so that table leg crashes. Now, if you take, and so like if all of these are proofs that you're using and you shoot them all out, the table top goes like that. And the logical mind can no longer believe it because you're showing it proof. Look, this is how it's not true. It's almost like you're not going to believe in aliens and then an alien ship lands and the brain must go, okay.
Will that affect your subconscious too, that subconsciously that belief will change?
Well, the subconscious is much easier to shift than the logical mind that's like, When it comes to the subconscious mind, much more is going to be done on an emotional level. Much more, because your subconscious mind is all the aspects you've suppressed. So your emotions are really the access to the subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. So what that would look like is the kind of inner child work I'm having people do. Sitting with their emotions is how to access that undercurrent. So that might look something like this. On a subconscious level, let's say that I believe that no man's going to commit to me because, let's face it, my dad never committed to me. He never was all in with me. Maybe he didn't even want kids to begin with, but I may not have that memory. All I have for my subconscious mind to basically go off is that nagging feeling of just like being abandoned and never being able to have someone. That's a feeling state. So if I'm present with that feeling state. If I go back to the childhood experience and I help improve that childhood experience, the subconscious mind changes like that, just so fast. So what we want to do is to get the subconscious mind and the conscious mind on board with one another. That's our whole goal, of course, is to become a unified being. To become a unified being, the subconscious and the conscious cannot be split. That's the point of enlightenment, of awakening, of becoming a fully self-actualized human being, is that the subconscious and conscious mind are no longer split. Make sense?
That was beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Teal. I know you have another interview now. So it was great having you here in Oslo. I hope you will come back, and I hope that you enjoyed it too.
I did. I will come back, of course. I like it. I like it.
It's a big challenge here.
Yeah, it's a serious challenge. It's definitely difficult for me, but I think that this place would benefit most particularly by an emotional awakening, and so I can assure you I will most likely be back here.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much and have a great trip back.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, guys. Much light from Oslo. Bye-bye.